Hi everyone and welcome. What is happening right now in Kyrgyzstan and what issues do they face and why? Welcome to Voices from the World with FUF, the Swedish Development Forum, who focus on spreading knowledge about global issues like human rights and climate change. My name is Matilda Andrén and I work with communications here at FUF. Today we're going to talk about a country that hasn't gained much media attention in Sweden or other European countries right now, Kyrgyzstan. So with me right now, I have Cholpon Chotaeva directly from Kyrgyzstan. She is a professor of history of Kyrgyzstan who has a long and vast experience in both research, teaching, and also giving counsel as a member of the expert council under the President of Kyrgyzstan with us. So very much welcome. A big mark for Kyrgyzstan is in 1991 when it gained its independence from the Soviet Union. But the way from there and to there was not easy. Can you tell us a bit more about the history from the independence today and what impact that has made on its people?
Okay, thank you, Matilda. Thank you for introducing me to your audience. Yeah, to start with, I have to say that Kyrgyzstan is a very young country in Central Asia. And it was established quite recently, I mean, in historical terms. It was created during the Soviet time by the Soviet policy of Bolsheviks in 1920s. So 1924 was the time when Central Asia was decided to be delimited or divided into so-called national territorial units by the decision of the Soviet authorities at that time. Stalin himself, who was the leader of the Soviet Union in 1920s after the death of Lenin, yes, the leader of the Bolshevik Revolution and so on. So before that, there was no any state called Kyrgyzstan in the world. Of course, there were some people called Kyrgyz, and they used to live in tribes, and they used to have their own culture, yes, their own culture, traditions, cultural values. But there was never such a state called Kyrgyzstan before, established on present-day territory of Kyrgyzstan. So therefore, the initiators of Kyrgyzstan, Kyrgyzstani state used to be the Soviet authorities. And of course, when the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Kyrgyzstan became independent state of Central Asia. But still, it's very young. It's only 30 years of independence. Yeah, it's sharply this year that Kyrgyzstan will celebrate its anniversary, 30 years anniversary of independence in August 31, 2021 this year. And of course, being a young, unexperienced state, it didn't deal with many problems and issues which it's been facing today. So Kyrgyzstan present day is a multi-ethnic state with many different ethnic groups, religious groups, even social groups, which are quite different from each other in terms of their cultural values, traditions, mentality, and so on. And of course, being very young, independent state, Kyrgyzstan has to learn very fastly how to deal with them. So once again, just to mention here, I have to tell that after independence, Kyrgyzstan had to build its political system very fast, right? There was no any experience how to do this before. Because during the Soviet time, it was done by the center in Moscow, in Russia. And the only thing which Kyrgyzstan were doing or dealing with were primarily educational or cultural issues, but never political or economical. That's why the early years of independence, I think 1990s especially, were quite hard time for Kyrgyzstan. But of course, it was also the time of euphoria, I mean, nationalist euphoria, when Kyrgyz people felt themselves kind of independent from Russia, from the Soviet Union, compared to what it was before. And I think nationalism, quite extreme nationalism, I think ethnic nationalism also appeared in Kyrgyzstan, which threatened the ethnic minorities which lived in Kyrgyzstan since the Soviet time. So once again, Kyrgyzstan is a multi-ethnic state, so with more than 80 different ethnic groups living on territory of Kyrgyzstan. And the largest groups are Kyrgyz, of course, that are more than 70% in the country. The number of Kyrgyz is growing, of course, steadily because of quite high natural birth rate. Second, not minority, but ethnic community in Kyrgyzstan is Uzbeks. They are about 15 or 16% in the overall population of the country. So, and the third one is Russians. And the number of Russians or Slavs in general is declining since 1980s, I think even before independence. So of course, it's due to nationalism that number of Russians is less and less. So many of them, they were migrating from the time of independence. But today, of course, it's more about the economic difficulties. It's about unemployment and overall poverty of the population in the country. But here I have to mention that there are many more ethnic groups who live in Kyrgyzstan, but of course, their percentage is maybe 1% only of the overall population. So they are Turks, Tatars, Uyghurs, Dungans, Belarus, Ukrainians, Germans, Jews, and many, many others. And of course, being such multi-ethnic state, Kyrgyzstan has to build the proper ethnic policy, right, to regulate or to manage the inter-ethnic relations. And I have to mention here that the inter-ethnic relations between different ethnic groups, especially the largest groups, as mentioned before, are not always peaceful. So sometimes there is some tensions, sometimes there are conflicts. And the history of independent Kyrgyzstan also witnessed such inter-ethnic conflicts. So most of them, they were not so large scale and violent, but there were two which marked the development of Kyrgyzstan in 1990, right before independence, and 2010, which were the most violent conflicts between the Kyrgyz and Uzbeks in the south of Kyrgyzstan. And the result of both conflicts were few hundreds victims from both sides. So what else we have? Kyrgyzstan, unlike its neighbors, is also marked by so-called colored revolutions. So unlike our Central Asian neighbors, we've got already 3 colored revolutions, 2005, 2010, and the last one was last year, 2020. So these colored revolutions also show somehow the political instability in the country. Probably the diversity of different groups inside Kyrgyzstan, I mean, among the Kyrgyz themselves. So I have to say that Kyrgyz are not also homogeneous people. So there are different tribes, as used to be in the past. And Kyrgyz are usually divided according to the regions, yes, they used to come from. And the largest division is coming between the northern Kyrgyz and southern Kyrgyz. And I have to mention there's 2 regional elites, southern Kyrgyz and northern Kyrgyz. They used to fight for power as well. So these cult revolutions, which we had in Kyrgyzstan during independence, also showed the struggle, okay, for power among these regional elites. What we also have in Kyrgyzstan, we have some other problems such as border issues. So since independence, Kyrgyzstan became an independent state. And of course, its borders became the national and state borders. So, and the way how Central Asia, the whole region was divided during the Soviet time also contributed to these border issues, which take place now after independence. So nobody knew that one day all the Central Asian Union republics would become independent states. And of course, nobody realized during the Soviet time that the borders between these Central Asian states would become one day national borders or state borders. Mm-hmm. Therefore, the way how they were divided or the way how they were demarcated, right, or delineated during the Soviet time was not very wise, I have to say. Mm-hmm. So especially in terms of the Fergana Valley, I think this is one of the most diverse regions in Central Asia. So Fergana Valley is present day divided among 3 Central Asian states. It's Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. And of course, the way how it was divided during the Soviet time was the way that big ethnic minority or community can be found on the territory of the neighboring state. And even more, there are many enclaves. Enclaves are the islands of the neighboring states on territory of Kyrgyzstan. So Kyrgyzstan has, I think, around 6 or even more enclaves of neighboring states on its territory, of Tajikistan, Uzbekistan. And of course, there are many border conflicts, kind of even daily conflicts, which take place on these border lines. Of course, these conflicts, they usually break out of very simple things, daily things such as water distribution. So I have to mention that Fergana Valley or the southern region of Kyrgyzstan is predominantly agricultural, where farming is mostly practiced. And in order to have this agriculture, Kyrgyzstan and other Central Asian states, they need water. So it's irrigated, yes, farming or irrigated agriculture. So therefore, there are many disputes or conflicts which emerge out of this water distribution. So the last conflict we just took place, I think 2 months before in April on the border between Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan started from this kind of particular, very simple thing, how to use the water for irrigation of lands in Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan.
Yes, so as you say, it's a young country. There are a lot of minorities and different ethnic groups. But looking at today, how is the situation for women and girls in the country?
What I can tell, of course, it's improving, right? Because Kyrgyzstan is many other states in the world. It's familiar with the global trends. I think Kyrgyzstan is also not isolated in terms of the internationalization, and there are many foreigners who are coming to Kyrgyzstan. But these kind of positive changes, they mainly take place in the big cities like capital Bishkek city or Osh city, which is the second largest city in Kyrgyzstan. But overall, I have to say that Kyrgyzstani society is quite patriarchal, quite traditional, quite conservative, especially in its relation to women, right? To women's rights, girls' rights. And of course, even today in 21st century, we have a lot of domestic violence or violence against women, especially in the remote areas, in rural areas of Kyrgyzstan. But the civil society activists, they are trying to work in this direction. There are many NGOs which have been created by women to advocate the women's rights. So I think they are trying to do their best in order to promote the rights of women, minorities, including sexual minorities and so.
Yeah, because Kyrgyzstan even have had the last couple of years, or since its beginning, I have understand, a very strong civil society with a lot of NGOs. But how are they facing the nationalism and conservatism in the country?
To be a woman is quite difficult in Kyrgyzstan because I think politics, yes, mainly in the hands of males. in Kyrgyzstan or in other Central Asian states, I think. So in here, I think Kyrgyzstan probably have a bit better situation compared to Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and probably some other states of Central Asia. But nevertheless, to be a woman and to exercise your human rights, yes, it's very hard. But what I can tell you just to prove that women are not so discriminated. For example, the university which I have been working for, I think 15 years. So the faculty members of the university are mainly women. So in education, even higher education, even compared to other countries like Japan, I've been working there for a few years. So women are predominating, and comparably in very high positions like professors, associate professors, and so on. So not to mention secondary school or primary school. In those institutions, I think mostly women are working and teaching. But of course, in case of politics, I think it's a bit different. So it's still the area of males, and women are not welcome or allowed there very much.
I understand. So to end this interview, I want to ask you about your hopes for the future, because you said it's now 30 years independence. So if you're looking at the future for the country, what are your hopes or fears for the country?
There are many fears, but yeah, the country I've been working and living all my life. Yes, it's quite young, as I mentioned, and very unexperienced. But I think Kyrgyzstan is eager to learn, right? And it's learning a lot from its own mistakes. Of course, we lack specialists, we lack experienced professionals and probably state officials, but we're learning, right? And I think my hope for the future is quite optimistic. I hope that we will have the new generations of young people who are educated in my university, for example, who will be educated in some other institutions of Europe, US, Canada, and so on abroad, and who will come back and contribute to the development of this country. And of course, in this case, I think the international community can also give some assistance as well to Kyrgyzstan by sharing its experience, by sharing its knowledge and expertise, just in order to train these young specialists in Kyrgyzstan and just to help them dealing with their own problems here in Kyrgyzstan too.
I think that is perfect last words. Thank you so much for sharing all your thoughts and all your history about the country with us today. And hope you have a beautiful day.
Thank you very much also for interviewing, and yeah, have a good day too.